the jocks. And they're usually quite physically fit as well and usually very pretty and da-da-da. The preppy people, the nerds and the geeks.
The geeks from like 20, 30 years ago, right now they're super rich.
It's true.
And they are hiring all the preps to work for them.
Exactly. And the preps are fighting for those jobs. Yeah. You work really, really hard. You need like perfect grades. You are in all the clubs at school. You've applied to 12 colleges, before you even start your senior year. It's just a little weird.
Yeah.
I think maybe they just need to relax a little. So if you're struggling in high school, don't worry. It gets better.
Welcome to Talk on Native, episode 5. My name is Vic from the Standard Candy.
And my name is Christine from RELO, which is the Regional English Language Office at the U.S. Embassy.
วันนี้มาพูดคุยกับ Native อีกแล้วย้ำอีกครั้งว่าไม่จำเป็นจะต้องพูดให้เหมือน Native เท่านั้นถึงจะเป็นภาษาอังกฤษที่ดีนะครับแต่ว่าเราอยากให้คุณได้อย่างน้อยเรียนรู้ได้ลองหัดฟังได้ลองจับเอาศัพท์สำนวนที่ Native ใช้จริงๆแล้วก็ฝึกการฟังฝึกการสังเกตดูว่า Native เขามีวิธีคิดวิธีการพูดอย่างไรนั่นคือสิ่งที่เราจะเรียนรู้ได้ Hi Christine
Hi Vic
How you doing
I am doing great How are you
I'm pretty great. Actually, I'm excited about what we're going to be talking about today.
I am too.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Okay. What kind of student were you? What were you like in school, in high school? Do you still remember?
Ooh, in high school. Do you still remember? Is that a comment about my age?
I'm sorry. I just mean, it was a long time for me too. It was a long time ago, like
it feels like a lifetime
away.
ago, like a couple lifetimes ago. But let's see, in high school, I would say, that first year in high school was a little rough, trying to like find my friends and figure out where I belonged. But after that, I found theater and really loved theater and musicals, so I became a theater kid.
A theater kid?
Yeah.
เป็นการผมว่ามันน่าจะมีหลายโอกาสที่เราจะชักชวนเพื่อนคุยว่าสมัยเรียนเขาเป็นยังไงและนี่ก็คือวิธีการชวนเขาคุยเดี๋ยวลองจับฟังศัพท์สำนวนดูนะครับว่าจะมีอะไรที่น่าสนใจหลุดออกมาบ้างจากการพยายามพาเพื่อนหวนอดีตกลับไปสู่สมัยวัยเรายังเรียนหนังสืออยู่นะครับ So you were a theater kid so you're into like theater acting
Yes every year at my high school we had a really big musical that we produced and so that was kind of like my thing that I did every year and I took theater classes and I was absolutely I loved it
I see from like series and movies all the time especially American ones that when the story happens in like the high school there must be like different group of like students and they kind of have a very like clear like characteristic like qualities to themselves right like the cliques as we say right so today let's talk about what cliques are there like in high school
Ooh, probably all kinds I mean it's been a long time since I was in high school so there may be different cliques now because that was all pre-internet.
Yeah,
I'm ashamed to say.
That's right.
But
let's talk about like the usual one.
Yeah, there's some pretty standard ones that I'm sure haven't changed. I would say the jocks are the most common, right? These are the kids that are really into sports and really good at sports.
Because sports are very big in like American culture and like American school life.
Absolutely.
So someone who's good at sports is like on the top of the pyramid automatically.
A lot of times, yeah. And especially where I grew up in a small town in the South, sports were everything. I mean, like the football game on Friday, the whole town was there. It was a big deal. So if you were really good at football, everyone knew who you were in town. It was a
ลอง
very
คิด
big
ถึงส
deal.
มัยก่อนที่เวลามันมีละครตอนจบ แล้วถนนแบบโล่งนะเพราะว่าทุกคนแบบต้องเฝ้าอยู่หน้าจอทีวีเพื่อดูละครตอนจบนั่นคือสิ่งที่เกิดขึ้นเมื่อมีเกมคือมีแบบสปอร์ตเกมเกิดขึ้นในสังคมอเมริกันคือทุกคนก็ต้องไปอยู่ที่เกมหรือว่านั่งเฝ้าเกมอย่างใจจดใจจ่อนั่นคือความสำคัญของกีฬาในสังคมอเมริกันนะครับ so sports is huge for the Americans a lot of students are playing sports to like play their way into college and play their way into the professional like career too
Definitely. Yeah. I knew several people who did that. That got we call it a full ride or a full scholarship to college because they were a great basketball player or soccer player or football player. Yeah.
Right. So the jocks on the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
So what do they usually look like?
Well, they're usually quite physically fit, right? Because they have to work out and do sports and all of those things. So I would say it's mostly that. I think it depends what type of sport they play. Like the wrestlers are going to be like these short, like solid guys.
American football, like football players?
Football players.
That's one of the biggest, right?
Yeah, they'll be taller and pretty solid too. But they're kind of all over because they have different positions they play that have different functions. So
not everybody is a quarterback.
Exactly. Like some of them might be huge, some of them might be kind of small but fast.
Yeah, swift.
Yeah, exactly. And then the basketball players will be taller. Everyone always thought I played basketball.
Because she's pretty tall, guys, because you don't see her standing up, but actually she's pretty tall. So I'm sure you get that a lot.
All the time. People used to stop me in the grocery store and be like, so I have this volleyball team. I was like, I'm a theater kid. I don't play volleyball.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the jocks. They're usually, athletic. That's kind of the core of what they're all about is sports.
So also on the top of the pyramid on the female counterpart, I think the cheerleaders pretty huge too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, cheerleaders might also be considered, a jock. I don't know. Like, maybe.
That's a form of sport too, like, right? Because a lot of like acrobatic stunts and
Definitely. And they're usually quite physically fit as well and usually very pretty and da-da-da. And with cheerleaders and jocks too, you might also call them part of a group that, at least when I was in school, we called the preps.
Oh, okay. P-R-E-P, the preps.
The preps. Yeah, P-R-E-P-S.
Is it short for something?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe we called them preppy people.
Preppy people.
Preppy. So usually these are, they could be into sports, but they're usually very good looking. Their family probably has a decent amount of money. They can afford all the nice, fancy clothes.
Gadgets.
Gadgets. I guess in my day we didn't have too many gadgets.
Okay.
We had like Walkmans. But these days, yeah, they would have the newest iPhone, the newest, fanciest computer, everything. Their parents would pick them up in nice cars. So those were the preps. And they were usually quite popular. Like think like homecoming queen, homecoming king.
I see.
That kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
ก็คือประมาณว่าเด็กที่แบบดังๆเป็นพิเศษหน้าตารูปร่างอาจจะการเรียนด้วยบวกเข้าไปแล้วก็ฐานะที่บ้านนะครับมีกินมีใช้เป็นเด็กที่ทุกคนในโรงเรียนอยากจะเป็นหรืออยากจะเดทนั่นเอง so they're someone who's everybody wants to be like or want to date
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I remember one of my friends in high school had a giant crush on one of the preps, and I just remember thinking like, oh girl, he doesn't even know your name. Like but she just had built this huge fantasy around this guy that she didn't even know, It's just like an idea of him.
So that's what happens in high school, right?
Yeah,
you have a crush and sometimes it's like it's never gonna happen, but you just
Go
crushing them hard.
Yeah. It happens.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do another click.
I would say maybe some of the most common ones are the nerds and the geeks.
Nerds and geeks.
Nerds and geeks.
Yeah. They're cool now, I think. Back in the day, they might not be so cool.
Yeah.
But it could be super cool right now because the geeks from like 20, 30 years ago. Right now, they're super rich.
It's true.
And they are hiring all the preps to work for them.
Exactly. And the preps are fighting for those jobs. Yeah. It's true. Although I don't know, the preps have money already. So
okay.
maybe it's not the preps fighting for those jobs.
That's true. Okay.
But it's true because like when I was in high school, the nerds or the geeks were probably really into computers. And that was like this separate thing that no one knew about but them. But now we all use computers and it's such a part of our life that you're right. Yeah, these former nerds and geeks are running the world.
Yeah.
Like Bill Gates, I'm sure.
Sure.
Had to have been a nerd or a geek or both.
So you want to talk about the difference between the nerd and the geek a
Yeah,
little?
there's like a subtle difference. I think nerds are very studious and very smart. They're really into school and learning and they read a lot, all of those things. Whereas a geek, maybe they're not that smart or maybe they're not that into school. They're just kind of awkward.
Socially awkward.
Socially awkward.
But from what I heard, they're pretty like an experts about something.
Yes.
Yeah, they might be like get all the age, but they're super like expert about something.
Right.
So that could be like a geek.
There's something they're really into, like video games or something like that.
And that could be like bookish also, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. But there's like some level of social awkwardness to them. People don't hate them or anything. It's just a little weird.
Yeah. But weird is cool.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
weird.
I do too. I think weird's great.
Yeah.
I mean, weird is how we get new ideas. This is how we create progress in the world. So
that's right. Yeah.
Keep being weird. If you're a geek, don't give up.
So there's another word here, like the overachiever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does it mean, the overachiever?
Yeah.
Like to achieve, we understand, right?
To achieve, right? You reach your goal, right? So if you overachieve, it's like you work really, really hard. You need like perfect grades. You are in all the clubs at school. You've applied to 12 colleges, before you even start your senior year. You have a 5-year plan, and you're still in high school. So I would say that's the overachiever.
Yeah. So what do you think about, what do you think of him?
I think maybe they just need to relax a little and enjoy being in high school because you'll have the rest of your life to have everything planned out and controlled. Like, just enjoy.
But I can understand them at some level because one of them, sure, is going to be the president of like the United States or the president of like some like huge company in the future.
It's possible.
That's their path.
Yeah.
I think
it's possible.
น่าจะมีเพื่อนแบบนี้แบบพวกเด็กนักเรียนทีมชาตินึกออกไหมครับคนที่บอกว่าตั้งใจเรียนเก่งทุกวิชาเป็นประธานชมรมอย่างน้อย1ชมรมเป็นประธานนักเรียนแล้วก็มีอนาคตอันสดใสรออยู่ยังแบบตอนนี้ยังแค่บอกม.4 ม.5 เล็งไปแล้วว่าจะสมัครงานบริษัทอะไรบ้างนั่นคือ the overachiever it could have like a small like negative connotation to it, like the overachiever.
Yeah, for sure. I think when I think of an overachiever, I think of someone who is trying to please everyone. And
also try to be the best at everything.
Yeah.
Try their best.
Very competitive, which can push people away sometimes.
Okay.
And they're probably quite stressed out, honestly. So yeah, hopefully they will be the president of a company, but hopefully they don't have a nervous breakdown beforehand.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the overachiever. And you mentioned your theater kids.
Yeah.
So basically, someone who's involved in like theater all the time.
Yep, absolutely. Wasn't there a show like a few years ago, Glee. Did you ever watch Glee?
A little, yeah.
I think those are like theater kids,
right?
Like
exactly.
Kids that are in all the musicals and things like that. And kind of right next door to the theater kids, literally in my high school, it was right next door to the theater class, was the band kids.
So band geeks.
Some people say band geeks.
Because they might not be seen as super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so when we say band here what kind of band are they talking about
We mean like a marching band.
marching band guys
So something you might see at a football game, or there's lots and lots of instruments.
so not like a rock band
No, no.
not the music club
No.
โอเคแบนด์ในที่นี้มันคือ marching band คือวงโยอะวงโยซึ่งอาจจะมีความรู้สึกเหมือนแบบไม่ค่อยคูลเท่าไหร่แล้วก็จะมีคาแรคเตอร์แบบเด็กวงโยอะยงอะไรประมาณนี้ก็อาจจะพอนึกภาพออกนะครับ so marching band what are some of the stereotypes of the marching band people
I mean, I think people think of them as geeks as well, but oftentimes they're very smart because music in itself is a language.
Right.
And I think a lot of times the band geeks sometimes are nerds as well. Sometimes they're straight up geeks.
Yeah.
They're just a little socially awkward, but sometimes they're brilliant musicians too. So it's a little bit of everything. I would say the band kids in my high school, they were the most promiscuous bunch.
What really
Absolutely were.
Okay.
They were, I don't know what was going on there, but they were definitely quite promiscuous, but like within their own group. Like they didn't branch out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
But it's like they spent so much time together because they practiced so much, and like every weekend had games they had to go to and play, and it was just it's kind of natural that they form a clique, right?
Right.
But it was maybe a little incestuous. I don't know.
Okay. Let's do the slacker.
The slacker.
Yeah, the slacker. So first of all, what's the meaning of like slack?
Yeah, if you slack or slack off, it means you are lazy and you don't do the work. You don't care.
Right.
Yeah.
So the slacker would mean someone who doesn't do anything much.
Yeah. Maybe they're just not really interested in school. They do the bare minimum that they have to do to make D's. So they pass their class. They're happy if they make a D. They're not interested in achieving at all. I would call that
so that's a slacker.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the another word that the stoners with the slacker too?
With the slackers. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I think we also have the hippies in school.
Okay.
And this probably has changed over the years.
Yeah.
Because like with my parents' generation, they were the original hippies, right?
Right. From the 70s.
The real ones, like the 60s and 70s, right? And then when I got in high school and we talked about hippies, they were like, what do you mean hippies? Like, that's over. And we're like, no, it's not.
So what do they usually look like?
Hippie. Well, these days, I would say they're probably dressed in very eco-friendly clothes. Maybe they're vegetarian or vegan and they don't wear leather or something. Maybe I picture them with like lots of scarves and colorful clothes. Maybe I am one. I don't know.
Cornrows?
Cornrows? No.
No, okay.
Probably not. Maybe, who knows? But they might have dreadlocks. Or they might not. Lots of jewelry.
Right.
They're into, gosh, what are they?
Eco-friendly people and like green, everything.
And spiritual.
Spiritual. I think that's a keyword too.
Yeah, maybe they're into meditation or exploring different religions or tarot cards or energy, that type of thing.
Very spiritual people.
Yeah, and along with that group, sometimes you might, along with a lot of these groups these days, but I think when people think of hippies, they might think of stoners.
Stoner. That's interesting. So stone, not stone as in rocks, right?
No.
Okay, but what is the other meaning of like getting stoned?
So if you are a stoner, you like getting stoned, which means you like getting high from marijuana.
Okay. So
that's what this means. Yeah.
Basically, you smoke weed all the time?
Yeah, if you're a stoner, yeah.
Okay.
All day, every day. So I think way back in the day in the 60s and 70s, everyone thought of hippies as stoners.
Okay.
But these days, maybe that's changed a little, especially because hippies are usually quite health conscious these days. So it may not always be true now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But you get the picture.
You get the idea.
Yeah. ก็อันนี้เป็นย้ำอีกครั้งว่าทั้งหมดที่เรามาพูดคุยกันในวันนี้ไม่ได้ต้องการจะแบบแบ่งผู้คนชนชั้นใดๆนะแต่ว่านั่นคือความจริงของโลกและสิ่งที่มันเห็นอยู่ว่าคนเรามีความสนใจมีคาแรคเตอร์ที่แตกต่างกันและแน่นอนพอคนที่มีความสนใจคล้ายๆกันมาเจอกันเขาก็จับเป็นกลุ่มนั่นคือความเป็นจริงไม่ได้ต้องการจะแบบแบ่งแยกสังคมหรือใดๆแล้วก็เราไม่ต้องการจะแบบ generalize or we don't want to like put people into like pigeonholing them.
Right.
Yeah, but this is the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, we're really just observing life here. Not saying it's good or bad.
Right.
It's just an observation of the way that things can happen.
How about the class clown?
Yeah. I don't know if I would really call this a clique because class clowns don't like any competition usually.
But you see it all the time, like in like a yearbook. Like this person used to be a class clown. Yeah, right.
So this was the person that was always doing something goofy or silly
Crack
to make
jokes
people
all the
laugh. They might even go to some really extreme to embarrass themselves just so people will laugh. So this is the class clown.
Yeah.And they might like grow up and get a job as a stand-up comedian.
Maybe.
Or something like that. And make a lot of money.
Yeah. Or maybe they'll just become a professional clown in a circus. Who knows? I don't know.
It could be. Okay. That makes me think of another word. Might not be a clique necessarily, but the teacher's pet.
Yeah, the teacher's pet. Yeah, they don't really like competition either.
No. There's no club for like teachers' pet.
No, they're on their own. And most of the kids probably don't like them either. So the teacher's pet is that kid who they may be an overachiever a lot of times. But
so that explains why they kind of want to spend like more time with teachers than their friends because maybe they want to learn something, they want some connections, they want some insights from teachers.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that is true, but I think the way that we saw them growing up was not like that.
I am trying to like say like paint the positive color for them.
You're a good spin doctor.
Yeah.
But I think the teacher's pet really just wants to please the teacher or brown nose the teacher.
That's a good word.
Which is when you suck up to the teacher.
Another good word.
Yeah, I'm using all kinds of phrasal verbs.
คือการประจบแบบประจบครูแบบเด็กที่นั่งหน้าห้องแล้วก็เป็นที่รักเหลือเกินของคุณครูนั่นคือ a teacher's pet นะครับ brown nose ก็คือประจบประแจงแล้วก็แบบ suck up to someone ก็คือประจบประแจงนั่นแหละ
They're a yes student even though it might not be true. You know, they're always just trying to please the teacher. And the other students are like, oh yeah.
Roll their eyes. Yeah, we should get more homeworks because we want to practice.
It's like, shut up.
I know. Yeah. So loved by teachers, not so much by
other students.
Yeah. Okay. And what else do we have?
I would say, and I think this is probably still a group now. I don't know for sure. I tried to text my niece last night because she's way younger than me, obviously, to verify, but she didn't get back to me. But I would say maybe the emos or the goths, the punks.
Okay. Like the misfits?
Kind of like a misfit group.
Yeah. It might sound like a bad word, but again, like nerds and geeks, I think they can be pretty cool also.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, all of these groups can be. Like, they all have their pluses and minuses and whatever. But when I was in school, that was when goth really became a thing.
Can you describe?
Yeah, so if you are goth, you like to dress all in black. You have black fingernails, black lipstick. You listen... Well, I don't know if you do anymore, but you used to listen to Marilyn Manson. That was like the king of goth. And you're just always sad. Always sad, always depressed. You're no sunshine in your
gloomy,
life.
24/7.
Yeah.
That's their thing.
Yeah.
They live for that.
Yeah.
That's their philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are the goths. And then you have maybe kind of in the middle of that would be like the emo kids. This is something I think that was born a little bit after I got out of high school. So maybe you might know more about emos than I do. I don't know.
I can't I can't tell that okay this person is like emo, but I've sure heard of it.
Yeah, it's kind of they have a kind of a similar attitude as the goths, but not quite that extreme. You know, like they might wear some red sometimes. It's not all black. They might throw a color in there, but they're also, you know, listen to the emo music, which is kind of, you know, I just think it's depressing, but that's just me.
Okay.
But very just emotional. They listen to Simple Plan. They kind of relish misery.
Right.
But not quite as extreme as the goths, if that makes any sense. Okay.
So that's another group or clique that we see in like high school.
And then with them, not really the same. You have punks.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a fine line between all these things.
Like
Yeah.
So punk. When I hear the word punk, like the mohawk.
Could be.
All the piercings.
Yep.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, maybe they're skaters too. They skateboard.
Yeah, sure.
They listen to the Ramones. They listen to the Clash. They you know, they wear the T-shirts, and they're usually kind of like a little angry, you know, a little edgy in that way. They're ready to spray anarchy signs, you know.
Okay. And I
everywhere.
also hear the word punk used in like conversations too, like that punk or you're a punk.
Yeah.
So what would that mean?
Yeah, if you call somebody a punk, it's like kind of like a jerk.
Okay.
You little punk.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I went into a Hollister. Do you know what a Hollister is? It's like they sell these fancy jeans. But I went in there, I was like maybe in my mid-30s at the time. And the young person, the high school student who was trying to sell me these jeans was like, okay, ma'am. And that was the first time someone had called me ma'am. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, you little punk. Like, I'm not ma'am yet.
I see.
So maybe you could use it like that.
Okay. All right. Do we have anything left? How about the okay, maybe if you don't feel like you fall into any of these categories, you might be a loner, I think. Yeah, so loner, as the name suggests, is like when you want to just be by yourself, I think, most of the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the loner was always alone, or I mean, that's not really a clique because you're alone, I guess. But maybe some type of stereotype, because really all of these are stereotypes, aren't they? But the loner would be someone who doesn't really socialize.
Okay.
Just doesn't really want to have friends, doesn't want to do that.
A lone wolf.
A lone wolf.
Oh, that sounds a little cooler.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Clint
Let's be a
Eastwood or
wolf.
something.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, like I just said, a lot of these are stereotypes. And just because you and your friends like to dress a certain way or listen to a certain music, it doesn't necessarily mean you're at this or at that. I think there's plenty of kids that are just normal, you know?
Right.
Just there, and that's fine. You know, that's great. Just be you, and maybe you can float around to different groups.
Yeah. I've heard of the word like normie.
Yeah.
Or like floaters even.
Yeah.
So someone who just, like you said, just be there.
Yeah, they're just
You're just there.
Yeah, I remember like talking about people from high school, you know, with people I went to high school with, be like, you remember so-and-so? No. You know, he wasn't like really a part of a group. He was just there. He was just there.
Yeah.
So he was just a regular kid. And that's great too.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe you have you're friends with this group and you're friends with that group, and all of that's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's, you know, I think in high school it's hard. You know, it's really hard to find where you belong. And I think cliques sometimes are an attempt to do that. Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot of late bloomers out there. Maybe you don't bloom in high school, but you would like later on in life in college or even later than that and that's fine too so there's no rush to get to like anywhere if that's your pace
yeah for sure I think a lot of people I think maybe in some ways I bloomed more after high school as well you know I had friends and stuff but I just especially when you grow up in a small town you know you're very limited in your knowledge of the world and who you're allowed to be so I think a lot of people really find themselves after that so, so if you're in that group don't worry like, it'll all come out in the wash and you'll be okay
so it's a lot of fun talking about the good old days and like kind of take us back to like years ago but so would you say that high school is like one of your best years okay
I think that might be stretching it like it was I definitely had fun in high school I think like I said in the beginning it was a little hard but once I moved on and like found you know kind of my group that I connected with it was I definitely had fun but would I go back and do it again No. No way.
But it's a part of who we are, right?
Yeah, it's a part of growing up.
It partially got us here.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. I was happy for it to be over, but I definitely still have good memories. So, what about you? Would you say that's your best? Those are your best years in life?
Some, but not the whole thing. Yeah, like I said, it kind of got me here. And I had some good memories and lots of bad ones. Yeah, but we can just pick and choose, right? We just have to live through all of them. And it's all good here. It's all good now.
Yeah,
I think that's what it matters.
So if you're struggling in high school, don't worry. It gets better.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love it. It gets better.
It does.
แล้วชีวิตของทุกคนตอนที่ยังเป็นนักเรียนอยู่เป็นยังไงบ้างสนุกไหมหรือว่าคุณอยู่ในกรุ๊ปโก๊กแก๊งไหนหรือเปล่านะครับลองแชร์ไว้ในคอมเมนต์เซกชันด้านล่างได้เลยครับ